Hello and welcome to the Heat Check Podcast, Miami Herald's Miami Heat Podcast. I'm David Wilson, and I'm joined, as always, on the other line by Anthony Chiang, our Heat beat writer here at the Herald. Anthony, I spent the last 10 minutes trying to come up with a good, Nikola Jovic joke with your name, but I couldn't come up with anything.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. He has a sense of humor about it. We didn't ask him about it, but I guess on draft night he said he still hasn't met Jokic, which that'll be interesting. Writing a story with both those guys when they play each other, and trying not to get mixed up between their two names.
Yeah, it's he needs a different name, like something just a little more different. Like Jovic, it's fine, whatever, I get it, but the first names are so similar. If he becomes a star, it'll be weird.
I'm gonna call him Nick. How about
that? Nicky Yo.
That's what Pat Riley called him that yesterday. He asked him, "Can I call you Nick?" And he said, "Yeah." So maybe that's what he'll go by, Nick.
That'll be the NBA draft is in the books. NBA free agency will be here pretty much any minute by the time people are listening to this. It opens up at 6 p.m. on Thursday. Deals can officially get signed a few hours later, really, right? Is it midnight that that new window opens on July 1st? So we're right in the thick of it.
Well, deals can get signed July 6th, I believe.
July 6th, okay.
At noon. So it's like that. It
gotcha. So they got a week there. Yeah. Either way, we are right in the thick of it, the NBA offseason. We're recording this on Tuesday afternoon. We're about 24 hours removed from the end of probably the dumbest NBA news cycle I can ever remember, with the Kyrie Irving, is he going to opt out or is he going to sign with the Lakers on a mid-level exception? In SportsCenter, they were talking about it like it was a done deal already, and then he comes out and announces that he's going back to Brooklyn. We'll get into all of this nonsense, but let's start with the draft, because I love the draft. We both enjoyed watching the draft. The Heat take Nikola Jovic, who was a name I think we joked about.
We did. Yeah, we did.
In the lead up to the draft, I think everyone joked about it. I frankly did not know anything about him. I was stunned when he stood up and looked absolutely nothing like Nikola Jokic. I just assumed they would be twins. Similar looking guys, not necessarily twins. The good news for Nikola Jovic is he didn't get drafted during a Taco Bell commercial like Nikola Jokic famously did. But yeah, then they started showing some highlights of him. Obviously, he was in Miami for a press conference on Monday. He'll be there for Summer League. I'm kind of into him. Those highlights were pretty impressive. He's got a fun skill set. Kind of a, when I heard the name Nikola, it's just natural. You're going to assume he's kind of a big plotting center. Obviously, Nikola Jovic is much more than that, but that's kind of the foundation there. He was a big guy back to the basket early on in his career. Nikola Jovic is not that. He's kind of a do-it-all 3-4 combo type guy who, I don't know, it feels like he could do a whole bunch of different things, and kind of I don't know, obviously the defense will probably be a question because that's hard to, I think, judge coming to the NBA with a guy when you don't know the level of competition and all that, how it'll translate. But at least offensively, he seems to have a very Heat skill set.
Yeah, I mean, he's kind of unlike anybody they've ever drafted before, right? The last time they drafted an international prospect that didn't play in college, right, in the United States was, I think, 1996, Martin Millsap. So it's been a while that the Heat have went this route, and he's a unique talent. I mean, young, just turned 19 a few weeks ago, one of the youngest guys they've ever drafted, offensively, very skilled, 6'11". Wouldn't be surprised if he reaches 7 feet because he's still so young and he's grown he's had a huge growth spurt. He said he grew another inch last year, so theoretically probably will be 7 feet by next year. And he can, he's a 3-level scorer, can make threes, shoot in the mid range. Obviously score around the basket, serve as a ball handler and screener in the pick and roll. Just a very versatile offensive player, very skilled. That will obviously need some development and need some time to get used to the NBA game, even on that end. Like you said, I think the big question mark is his defense, right? I mean, physically, 6'11", 230 pounds, he's going to get bullied a little bit.
Yeah, and rookies typically suck on defense.
Yeah, that's going to be a learning curve for him. I think Summer League will be our first chance to see, okay, can this guy actually play minutes like as a rookie? I don't know that. And we asked Adam Simon that and Pat Riley that on draft night, and they're like, we don't know. Like it's going to depend on. We'll see in summer league where he's at. We'll see how much he can improve and work on his body in the next 2 or 3 months before camp, and then we'll figure that out. I don't think it's been ruled out, but I wouldn't be surprised if this is one of those picks that he's in the G League a little bit in the rookie, as a rookie, because he's going to need some development. He's a very young and raw player. He took on basketball, I think, at 13. He was a water polo player, so he's a late bloomer.
Jokic was too, right? Wasn't that part of Jokic's
You know
story?
what? I feel like I've seen a picture of Jokic like in a water polo.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he was a water polo player, which is how he's got all those like above the head passes.
True.
He's a water polo player.
True. Hey, look, I'll say this: if Jokic is anything close to Jokic, the Heat got a huge steal in the 27th pick. But there's an upside pick, which I think is interesting because we talk so much about the Heat
about guys who can immediately contribute.
Yeah.
I mean, we saw EJ Liddell was sitting there. I texted you, right? I don't remember who picked right before the Heat, but right after that pick went in, I texted you like, wow, they could actually get this guy here because we weren't sure about it. Obviously, he ends up falling a lot further than
he did. Yeah, surprised by that.
Like clearly, we were higher on him than NBA execs and scouts were, but like like you said, we thought they were going to try to get a guy who could help them right away, and frankly, I don't expect Jovic to necessarily be that next year, especially now like playoff time. I mean, you look at, the Warriors had all these great rookies in the regular season, and those guys couldn't even get on the court in the playoffs. You can be a rookie in the regular season. Kendrick Nunn a couple years ago, right? Like same deal. Like in all likelihood, Jovic is probably not going to help this team come playoff time next year, which again was a little surprising. Now was EJ Liddell going to be that guy? Who knows?
That's the thing.
There was a more clear path, right, for EJ Liddell to like help you right away. But this is an upside pick. I mean, EJ Liddell has some very obvious flaws, just like with his size, and a little older. Jovic, like you said, a ton of upside here. I mean, that's always kind of like you take a European, you're like, a lot of upside. Who knows what this guy's going to look like? But you could see it just with the offensive skill set here, where if he can become a like competent defender, that offensive skill set is that just you combine that with adequate defense, and that's enough to be a good NBA player, a useful NBA player.
Yeah, I think to your point, like there was no guarantee anybody they chose there at 27 was going to help them this year anyway. So I think the Heat decided, let's just go for the upside pick, right? And honestly, worst case scenario, they have he's a rotate. Like let's say he turns into a bench, rotation player off the bench. They have him under contract for 5 years under team control, affordable deal, guy with upside that they have time to develop now on this rookie deal. So it makes sense, and yes, your window is now. You got to win now. At the same time, you also got to plan for the future. You can't just totally.
And again, like you said, 27 is not like you can try to make a win now move, but there's no guarantee.
Yeah, there's no guarantee, right? And look, I'm not saying they're going to trade Jovic, but he's a guy with upside that might intrigue some teams, and he could be part. If something comes up and they could trade for a star, and now they have another young, intriguing asset with upside. It's just another trade chip that they have in their belt. So
that was the next point. I mean, it's kind of like with when they took Precious. The ID, I think he was conference player of the year in the American, I think that year. So he had probably a little bit more of a pedigree where you kind of felt like he was going to be helpful, but he was still like kind of a project with a really unique skill set, and the Heat obviously trust their development ability to get out of a guy like that. Whereas Liddell, again, probably a little bit more of a finished product already. If you're trying to flip him for Donovan Mitchell or Bradley Beal or Kevin Durant, I think Jovic to a team that is going to be into a rebuild mode, which that would probably be the case certainly in Washington, potentially in Utah, depending on how things go. Maybe Brooklyn if we'll obviously talk a little bit more about that. Jovic is just seems much more appealing to a rebuilding team than a EJ Liddell or a high floor type guy. So I think it, like you say, it kind of helps them build for the future. Like you always need to have an eye on the future, but I think it also does help short term because of the trade possibilities there. I mean, if he's awesome in summer league, and then the Heat are going to give him some chances in the regular season just because Jimmy's going to take time off. Kyle Lowry's going to take time. Like he's going to get some looks at some point in the regular season. I'm sure if he flashes a little bit,
Sure, sure.
then all of a sudden he becomes I think a pretty interesting piece because he's got a tantalizing skill set. He's got like, if you just look at the maximum ability of what he can be, like that's like an all-star type guy just because of all the different things he can do on offense. Again, the defense is a huge question mark, and whether he can hit all those, his ceiling as a 19-year-old is up for debate. But he's got skill set of a guy who you look at and you're like, that guy can be, an engine of your offense a little bit.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, theoretically, like even though he's probably not going to play a lot of minutes, like right away, he's probably one of the most skilled offensive players in the roster already, just with his kind of versatile offensive skill set and everything he can do on the end of the court. But yeah, I think he'll get minutes here and there, spot minutes. I mean, look, even like Max Strus, undrafted free agent, gets signed, signs a two-way, and he's playing some significant minutes as a rookie. So it's a little different because he's a younger player, Jovic, but I wouldn't be surprised if, there's always, as we know, during spots in the season where guys are injured or now these days COVID or different things like that you need your depth. And I'm sure Jovic will be a part of that.
Are you excited? I mean, we were talking, I don't remember if we talked about this on the mic or just off mic last week about like, you never know what the summer league is going to be like when you're drafting this low.
Yeah.
Like, is he a guy you're excited to?
Oh yeah, it's gonna be fun.
Yeah. Like he's like, that's a summer league play. Like if you take an EJ Liddell, it's like kind of like, oh, whatever. This guy's a role. Like his
it's
ceiling
a known
is a
commodity.
player. Jovic's ceiling is like star, and in the summer league, that means he gets to like take 25 shots a game or something.
Yeah, I mean, Heat's summer league team is going to be pretty good because they have Jovic, but then they have four guys who were part of their roster last season: Yurtseven, Smart, Highsmith, Mulder, and then all the undrafted guys they signed. Like, yeah, it's gonna be fun to watch Jovic play, especially like if they start. I know Yurtseven's not going to play until they get to Vegas, so he's not playing in San Francisco. But a front court of Yurtseven and Jovic, that'll be fun to watch.
I'm kind of not expecting to see a lot of Yurt in summer league.
He probably won't play much, but even those like 2 games maybe he plays in Vegas.
Yeah,
I'm interested to see what that looks like.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think just the element of the unknown, like, yeah, you're serving. Jovic has played a lot of games in Serbia, but we haven't seen him like. We haven't watched him on TV
the athleticism, at least. Right? I don't know enough about the Serbian league to like speak to how good those teams are, but the athleticism in summer league is always a step up. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's a different game too. Like the rules are a little different, but it's different than a guy like we've watched like Gonzaga play for 3 years.
Right, exactly.
Right? Like we've seen clips of this guy, but we haven't.
He's never played against a single player he's going to play against in summer league. Like he's an unknown.
Yeah. So that it'll be fun. I think it adds definitely an intriguing element to summer league.
And he's going to be like their shot guy. Like he's going to be the guy driving the offense.
I would think so. I mean, I guess you could say Mulder or
right. I mean, they've got like Smart, point guard, whatever. So like,
But Jovic, we'll definitely get a lot of reps, I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean, Pat basically said it, right? Like, let it fly.
Let it fly, yeah. We're not going to overcoach you. Let it fly. Like, use your instincts and, like, let's see what we got. So I think it'll be good for Jovic to get that experience, but also for the Heat to kind of see what they're getting. Because, I mean, they've scouted him, obviously, and they've gone to Serbia to watch him, and they watch his pro day in Chicago. But I think Summer League, they'll get a pretty good, like, idea of maybe how much he could do at this point.
All right, let's pivot over to free agency. Where should we start? Because the story of the week, it's gonna be old news by the time people listen to this, was the weirdest, like, 12-hour Kyrie Irving news cycle, where everyone, I think I saw, he was getting traded to 5 different teams. He was signed in the mid-level with the Lakers. He was going to be on the Heat. He was going to be on the Wizards. Maybe he'd go to Chicago. Maybe Kevin Durant was going to go to Miami. Maybe Kevin Durant was going to Chicago. And then at like 5:30 p.m. or something, Kyrie just acts like he's making earth-shattering news and opts in. Thinking differently by taking
a $36 million contract. Yeah.
Yeah, he's like, wow, I'm thinking real differently. I'm going to take a ton of money. So it seems like for now we can probably assume that, I don't know.
Don't ever assume anything.
Never assume anything with the Brooklyn Nets, I guess. But it doesn't seem like they're going to be urgently moving those guys at this point, right? So probably makes the storylines a little bit less exciting for the Heat going into free agency week. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, if this was still looming, like Kyrie and Kevin Durant would have still been possibilities, right? For
Yeah.
I don't know how realistic they would
And
have been,
again,
but they would have
we're
been
not ruling it out.
possibilities. And you
Never
never
rule
rule it. I mean, look,
Brooklyn Nets.
I I don't know what their plans are with Kyrie, but can you? I would argue that it's easier now to trade Kyrie than it was before, because
Oh,
before we would
definitely.
need to take a sign and trade, and he wouldn't need to agree to a long term contract, and no, not many teams wanted to give him that. Now he's an expiring deal.
Yeah, that's true.
So would you be surprised if somehow the Lakers put together a package and like got a deal done? I mean, they don't have much to give other than like Russell Westbrook and picks, but I
Who
guess it
also
could
opted in
happen.
today, right? Russell Westbrook.
Russell opted in, or like another team that wants to get a chance in Kyrie for an expiring deal.
Mhm.
So obviously you can't question Kyrie's talent. He's one of the best players and best offensive players in the league. So yeah, for now it's done, and you would expect Kevin Durant to stay in Brooklyn now that Kyrie's. We think he's
As long as
staying.
Kyrie is in Brooklyn,
Yeah,
I feel pretty confident Kevin Durant will
yeah.
be in Brooklyn.
Yeah, but yeah, it was it made for interesting headlines for like those 3 or 4 days.
Yeah. Well, Monday it was like one of the quietest sports. The Stanley Cup was done the night before, so we're done with hockey and basketball playoffs. Baseball Monday is always a quiet day in the
Yeah,
baseball
true.
world. Um, Wimbledon was just starting, so nothing interesting happening there. So like the only story that was happening in the world was this Kyrie drama that wound up being not very dramatic, at least for now. But again,
For
like we
now.
said, are you interested at all in him with the Heat?
Um, Not if it took Bam, obviously not Bam or Jimmy, and
Oh yeah,
I wouldn't trade Tyler Hero for him either. I
yeah. I'm
just
not.
think it's too big of a question mark. And from what I was told, I just don't know. I don't think the Heat were. I'm not saying the Heat weren't interested in Kyrie. I'm sure they poked, like Sham said, they poked around. But I mean, obviously they're gonna do their due diligence, but I'm not. I don't. The Heat, from what I know, like they didn't aggressively pursue Kyrie. It's one of those things that like if he could be had for cheap, which at one point there was a thought that maybe he could, right? Because they
Yeah,
were saying he might take exception money, or maybe it doesn't take Tyler to get a deal done. Like, yeah, maybe the Heat would have done it, but they weren't like head over heels trying to get Kyrie. So yeah, I mean, I think it depends on the cost. Yeah, I'm obviously interested. I'd be intrigued if I were the Heat in Kyrie Irving because he's a unique talent. But I wouldn't like give up my top trade assets for him at this point.
yeah. I want no part of him.
Yeah, I
That's
mean,
down.
it's tough. Like this is gonna be if he really does stay with Brooklyn and like he plays 70 plus games, and he
He'll
has
be a major outlier in the last 5 years of his
sure,
career.
but that he'll get the contract he's looking for next year if he
Yeah,
does that.
exactly.
And
Yep.
that's what this year is going to be about for him, right? Like building up his stock. Like he kind of just learned, I think, he won't obviously like he's not going to make it seem that way, but it's pretty clear that there weren't a lot of teams going after him
Yeah.
this week. So I think he realized you have to build your stock back up. So if he's available and he plays and Brooklyn gets far in the playoffs and he's a big part of that, he'll do that.
He basically hasn't had a meaningful moment in the NBA since he made one of the biggest shots in NBA history, to be fair, to
Yeah.
beat the Warriors. But since then, no one has gathered more headlines for a guy who is like accomplished less than him
Yeah, I think
in
that's
the
probably fair.
NBA. I
Yeah.
mean, I guess he went to he was on the team the next year when they went to the finals.
Right.
But obviously they got wiped off the floor by the Warriors and kind of ran through a crappy Eastern Conference. Um, and the next year he goes to Boston, did absolutely nothing in his 2 years in Boston, and has done nothing in 2 years in Brooklyn. So
Yeah, 3 years in Brooklyn. The first year, I think he played like 20 something games because of a shoulder injury. And second
yeah,
year in
yeah,
Brooklyn, he played. It was a bunch of personal issues that kept him out for a few games. And last year, obviously, with the whole
yeah,
like not getting vaccinated thing, like he didn't play much either. So yeah, it's been a weird three. He hasn't really accomplished much in Brooklyn. He hasn't been available enough to accomplish
yeah,
anything in Brooklyn. But we'll see if that changes this year. I mean, obviously, if like the Nets have Kyrie and KD for most of the season,
yeah. They'll be good.
and Ben Simmons is healthy, like they're going to be a contender.
Yeah,
But there's always that big question mark with them, especially with Kyrie and Ben Simmons.
I think and you mentioned do the Heat have very much interest in Kyrie? Probably not, and I have to imagine part of that is that if Kyrie goes somewhere else, they are going to be like first in line in the Kevin Durant sweepstakes.
Yeah, I
So, like,
think
you wait out the Kyrie move because you
yeah,
want
for
to get the
sure.
second move and get Kevin
Yeah,
Durant.
why are you gonna you basically take yourself out of the Kevin Durant
Right,
sweepstakes
exactly.
if you trade for Kyrie? So yeah, I think there was obviously a lot more interest from the Heat and Kevin Durant if he were to become
Yeah.
available. Like they would have been all in on that.
Yes,
And I don't
that's
think
you
I'm
give up
breaking any
anything for that.
news.
You give up
I don't think,
everything you can for that.
yeah, I don't think I'm breaking news by saying that. I mean,
Yeah,
I'm sure
exactly.
20, I don't know, I guess 2019 probably would have been all in on Kevin Durant if he was available. That would have been crazy. Like that Kevin Durant sweepstakes. It would have been like maybe some unlike anything we've seen because he has 4 years left on his deal. And like even teams that he doesn't want to go to
Yeah,
would probably be willing to trade for him because he has 4 years left on his deal. And what is he gonna do? Right. So it would have
right.
definitely would have been a crazy few weeks if that would have happened. But it looks like Kevin Durant staying in Brooklyn.
Do you think? Oh, no, this is again like we're getting like steps away, but like the fact that there is the possibility. Again, we're saying for now, Brooklyn maybe is like they got their guys, like whatever they're planning to go into this year and contend. But the just knowing that the possibility that Brooklyn can blow up at any minute and maybe Kyrie or Kevin Durant becomes available, do you think that would, you know, you've been pretty set on like the idea that maybe the Heat are not going to go necessarily like they're going to kind of mostly just keep things intact. You know, maybe if a guy like Beal or Mitchell really becomes available, they'll be in. But do you think the fact that Kevin Durant is still like, you know, maybe he gets moved by the trade deadline because Kyrie like something weird happens and he ends up on the Lakers. Like, do you think that there is a part of that with the Heat where they like why worry too much about Donovan Mitchell or Bradley Beal when there's an X% chance that you can get
Yeah.
Kevin Durant?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure that's in the back of their mind, but I don't know how you can bank on that because
Yeah,
even if he does become available, like
it's
we
a
just
risk.
said,
It would be a risk to wait
yeah, I
it
mean,
out.
there's going to be every team competing for him, right?
Right.
And you're not, I mean, he could put together a very good offer, but I don't know if it's the
Gotta let
best.
Jovic. They gotta let Jovic loose. Make him
Yeah,
look
but
like a.
Jovic starts out, is averaging 25 points a game in the first 2 months. Then maybe they don't need Durant, right? They have Durant on the roster.
That's true.
But I don't know if you can bank on that because there'll be so much competition for Kevin Durant from almost every team in the league.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't know if he's going to become available. I mean,
Yeah.
again, like for all we know, Brooklyn could be really good this year, and they make it work. And Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving spend their entire careers in Brooklyn, and they win 3 championships. I don't know. So, yeah, it is a possibility. Just like
Mm-hmm.
you never know what's going to happen with Donovan Mitchell and Bradley
Yes.
Beal and Damian Lillard. But for now, it doesn't seem like those guys are going to be available anytime soon. Looks like Bradley Beal is going back to Washington,
Yeah.
going to sign a max extension. Donovan Mitchell, there really hasn't been too many rumblings about him
He
leaving.
still is the one that feels like that could change anything because
Yeah,
they kind of just felt on, you know, like there's been a lot of reporting on Beal that he's going to like sign the extension and go back to Washington. In Utah, you know, they just hired a coach like an hour ago or something. Like they've kind of been
yeah,
unsettled, which has made it like I think a little hard for Mitchell's name to know what his future is. He's still the one that I feel like could get moved this summer out of like the
sure,
stars.
sure. Part of me feels like he's gonna see how it works out there,
Yeah,
right?
that's the
Like
other part.
with the new coach and now like with Fizdale in the front office, and let's see what they do with Rudy Gobert, right? It seems like that's inevitable at some point that they're gonna trade Rudy Gobert. We'll
Mm-hmm.
see what they get for him. So I feel like he's gonna try to. It seems like he's gonna try to make it work, for now. But again, like that's why I've always felt that the likelihood was that the Heat are gonna run it back for the most part. Like yeah, there'll be
Yeah.
changes, there isn't like that avenue for them to really make a huge change unless one of these guys demands a trade. They don't have cap space.
Yeah.
They have exceptions to sign guys. So yeah, maybe they'll add a role player, to the rotation, but it's going to be the same core unless somebody unexpectedly becomes available in the next few weeks. Like it's not like again, it's not like I'm making a bold prediction like that.
Right.
Just kind of what all signs point to at this point.
Well, I'll say it was kind of a bold prediction to say that you don't think like any of these big stars are going to move,
Yeah,
and just because that's how the NBA works, the big stars move. There tends to be at least one kind of like big trade every summer at this point. But kind of like that's where we're at right now. And again,
yeah,
things are going to change a million more times probably between now and Thursday, and then between then and July 6th, and then between then and the start of the regular season. But right now, like you're saying, nothing seems now that Kyrie is opted in. And I think Brooklyn knows they've got to keep Kyrie to keep Kevin Durant, basically, right? Like they are really incentivized to kind of keep that thing together. Um, it does not feel like there's an imminent star to be traded. Now, again, like it could change any minute, but that's ultimately where we're at. And I kind of like when you made that, when you were always saying that you thought it was going to run it back. The reason I wasn't sure about that is because I thought stars are going to be available, and all of a sudden there aren't any. So now we're talking about PJ Tucker.
I was gonna say PJ Tucker. Like speaking of running it back, I might be wrong
Right,
because
because the
yeah,
PJ
I mean
Tucker
yeah, for most of the core will be back, but a member of the core could leave in PJ Tucker, and that's what Pat Riley called him during the season-ending press
yeah, I mean he
conference.
was
He
what their
said
fifth
PJ's
best
part of the
player
core.
this year, probably fourth
Yeah,
best.
starting power forward, one of the most reliable players. That was the guy they stuck on the best player, on the opposing team in the playoffs. Was a surprisingly good, versatile offensive player for the
Yeah,
Heat. Um, and I kind of just assumed PJ would be back, honestly. 'Cause I know that the Heat really value PJ. I thought PJ was happy in Miami. Like it seemed like he was happy in Miami. Him and Jimmy built a pretty good relationship. He was being used in ways he hadn't been used like in 6, 7 years offensively. They're a good team. He has a starting role. I just assumed he'd be back, and the Heat
yeah,
have like the means to bring him back, right? They have the exception and can match really pretty much any offer if they wanted to with that full exception. But now, I mean, just as we started to record this, Keith Pompey from the Philadelphia Inquirer reported he's been reporting that PJ is going to Philly like for the last week, but he doubled down and said that PJ will choose the Sixers 3-year, $30 million offer over opportunities to remain in Miami or go back to Milwaukee. So I don't know. Again, like I have to do some reporting on this, but like I don't know if that means the Heat aren't going to offer him that because they could, right? We can get into a conversation next of like if they should, but they could offer him 3 years, 33 million, and either match Philly's offer or I guess exceed if it's really 3 years, 30 million from Philly, as Keith Pompey is reporting. Um, or it means like he's picking Philly no matter what, even if the Heat gave him the most money they could. Like I don't know, but um, yeah, I mean, like I entering today, I still thought like there was a pretty good chance PJ would be back. I just can't see the Heat letting him leave. But if PJ is really dead set on going to Philly, as these reports are saying, then maybe not. It's going to be interesting to see how it plays out in the next few days.
yeah. $30 million buys a lot of pancakes.
Oh yeah, a lot of pancakes. I think unlimited pancakes for life. But David, honestly though, like the Heat could let's say he Philly does offer him the 3 years, 30 million, right?
Uh,
And PJ goes to the Heat and says, "I want to stay in Miami, but you guys got to give me the 3-year, $33 million
30,
deal, fully guaranteed. Use that exception. So you're paying him around $11 million when he's 40, right? And B, by using that exception, you pretty much are saying bye probably to Caleb Martin because that's their biggest like asset to use on signing either Caleb or an
right.
outside free agent. If they use that exception on PJ, like all they have is like the 4 million biannual and minimums pretty much. So like, would you give him that? Like, would you be willing to do it to keep him and sign him to that 3-year, $33 million deal?
I don't know, 33 years. He's going to be 40 by the end of that
Yeah,
deal we talked about last week. Um, he is still good, very good right now. Good to very good, whatever you want to call it. He is pretty reliant on the corner 3-point shot for his scoring. Um, Obviously, still a very good defender. Um, I probably will lean toward no because I think with Caleb, I think both of us are pretty high on Caleb. I think it's going to depend on how high the Heat are on Caleb, I think, right? Because if you think you can basically like whatever the next step Caleb is going to take plus, I don't know, like whatever player you're going to sign someone probably to replace PJ. If you think you can basically make up what PJ Tucker was with Caleb plus whatever, and you know, you can get a younger guy. Like you don't have to worry about what's PJ Tucker going to look like when he's 40 years old. I think that's the smarter play.
yeah.
Um, Now you might feel pretty dumb if PJ Tucker is still like the same player in 3 years, but
Like the Bucks did last year, right?
yeah,
They
exactly.
missed PJ.
Like,
The Bucks really missed him.
yeah. I would lean, I would probably lean toward no. I think between Caleb and whatever else you can get there out on the open market, I think you can mostly piece it together. But obviously, I mean, the Heat missed PJ Tucker a lot in Game 7 of that Celtics series too, right? He missed the second half of that game
Yeah.
with an injury, and obviously they come up just short. So, you worry. You talked about the Jay Crowder situation last week, and you wonder if the Heat are a little like scarred by that, and is it too risky to let PJ Tucker go because of that? But I don't know. I mean, giving a guy like PJ Tucker, who again is like a fifth starter essentially, right? I mean, he was probably the Heat's fourth best starter, and banking on that guy still being good until he's 40, I think is pretty risky. But at the same time, if you're like our window is these next 2 years, and
Next
like
year,
we've
you
got
do
this,
it. Yeah.
you got to do it because at some point you're going to be paying like. It's been the concern with this core all along is if Kyle Lowry and Jimmy Butler fall off, like you're kind of screwed anyway. So maybe you just go really all in for the next year or two and bank on, whatever. If we stink in 3 years, like it is what it is.
Yeah. I think if I'm the Heat, I'd be willing to give him the third year if it is using the, and we're getting into the weeds here, but
All right.
forgive me, the non-bird exception, which is a little less. It's 8.4 million. You can give him 3 years, 27 million. So it's $6 million less than you can give him with the other exception. So it's less money he'd have to take, but it's with guaranteed third year. You could, I guess, argue and make the pitch to PJ that it's state taxes, like
Good taxes.
get it closer, even though Pennsylvania's state income tax rate is only 3%. So it's not much, but still, it makes up for a little bit of difference. He has a really good big role in Miami. You're going to be on a good team. He already lives down here, has like established reputation down here.
Free big face coffee for life.
Free big face coffee for life. And then the reason I would do that, not only because it's less money, but also then you still have the $10.3 million exception to use on Caleb Martin, or on another free agent. So it preserves your flexibility. And I think that's huge. I think that's one of the biggest reasons. I don't know if I would do the 10.3 for PJ.
Yeah.
Not because of the 40-year. I mean, that's something you have to consider, but the fact that you basically limits your flexibility.
Right. It's
altogether.
that risk. It's the risk of what he looks like when he's 40 combined with losing Caleb Martin.
Or anybody else you could sign with 10 million.
Or anybody else you can sign.
Yeah.
Like you're probably getting better, or you're staying as good. Like, that's PJ Tucker probably will be a better player than Caleb Martin, whoever else you can get. But is the difference that much? I think that's an open question.
Right. Or in like year 2 or year 3 of the contract,
especially
be better than Caleb Martin.
Year 3.
Yeah.
Right.
And like you might be able to get Caleb and another free agent with that 10.3 million because
can they reunite the Martin twins?
You might. I mean, why not give them $5 million each? $5 million each.
Yeah, the Morris twins move.
Yeah, and be done with it.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's gonna be. I guess like again, I still think it's a possibility returns to Heat. I know like Keith Pompey, Mark Stein are reporting strongly that he's going to Philly, which is kind of crazy, right? Like, didn't the Bulls and the Heat get?
We talked about this last week. They're not going to be picking in the second round next year. It doesn't sound like.
And the Knicks either. I mean, I think like as we're recording this, I don't know, it's like Chris Mannix reporting that like basically like about the Knicks pitch to Jalen Brunson and how Jalen Brunson is now expected to go to New York. It's like, what day? It's June 28th, right? It's not July 1st.
We got a couple more. We got like 48 hours before we get into this stuff.
It's just, it'll be interesting to see how the NBA handles that, right? But yeah, I guess Heat fans do have to get ready for the possibility that PJ Tucker might not be with the Heat next season. Not only that, he might be on a team that they're competing with for one of the top spots in the Eastern Conference.
Yeah, I have a hard time believing that he would go to the Sixers if the Heat were offering him the same thing.
I would think so, but man, like, how could you make that this? If these reports are true, and Keith Pompey is a very credible reporter, Mark Stein is obviously a very credible reporter. If he's already like feels that strongly that he's going to Philly, like, I don't know. Like you would think he like I remember Jay Crowder when all that was going on. Like he was or Barry and I reported that he gave the Heat a night to like think this through, like to make sure they didn't want to up their offer. Like he really wanted to come back. You
Right.
know, like he gave him a night to sleep on it, gave him a chance to increase the offer. The Heat said that's it, that's as far as we're gonna go, and he went to Phoenix. But like it seems like PJ is like already not gonna even give the Heat much of a chance when negotiations actually are allowed to begin. Again, if this is true. So we'll see in the next few days.
Assuming they lose PJ Tucker, are there any any names that have popped out to you who are like guys to maybe watch, whether it's stuff you've heard within the Heat or just like
Yeah.
guys who you think help either fill that role or maybe fill a different role that they can change some
Um,
stylistic stuff.
a few like names in free agency at least are like Otto
Yeah,
Porter Jr.
yeah.
Uh,
Otto was the one who stood out to me. I liked what he did in the finals, honestly. Like he was kind of
yeah,
streaky with his shot, but
yeah. I mean, he's one that would make sense. I don't know if if the Heat have the exception to use, I'm sure they could probably get him for that, right?
yeah.
T.J. Warren, could he play power forward? I know there's some bad blood between Jimmy and him, but I mean, he's probably the most talented forward of the group that the Heat
Yeah.
would be able to get at that price point. Thaddeus Young, a name that's like been linked to
Oh,
the
like
Heat every
3 years
year.
trade deadline name for us, right? Wasn't
Yeah,
he?
every year I feel like Kyle Anderson. I, I mean Chris Boucher. I don't think that would work.
Anderson, I like Anderson a lot. He doesn't seem like he fits like what the Heat are
Yeah,
looking for.
yeah, I
A
agree. And
little
same with
redundant
Chris.
with Nikola Jovic.
Right. Yeah. No, for sure. And maybe Chris Boucher is another name that like I don't think he fits either. Like
Yeah, he's like a center.
he's like he's too
Marvin
thin.
Bagley too, also like a center to me,
Yeah.
more than like a.
I mean, one name that would work like fit perfectly for what PJ brought, but I just don't know what the chances of him leaving Milwaukee is Bobby Portis.
Yeah, I
Um,
love Bobby Portis.
Bobby Portis would be a perfect fit for what they look for in that 4 spot next to Bam. Other than that, I mean, you're talking
Derek
about
Jones Jr.
Caleb
Right
Martin,
back.
right? Caleb Martin might be
Well,
like,
Caleb and Cody, right? Just
yeah.
reunite them. I have no idea how much money Cody Martin's gonna get, or like if that's possible. But like,
I'm guessing mid-level
I'm
money.
looking at this list from hoopsrumors.com of free agent rankings. They got Cody 29, Caleb 30. So
I think that the big PJ might leave and that's painful for the
PJ
Heat.
21 for what it's worth on this
For
list.
what? 21? Okay.
21.
But the bigger issue to me is like who do you replace him with if he
Right.
leaves? Right. Like that is like the concerning issue because they spent an entire year trying to replace Jay Crowder. They never were able to with Mo Harkless and they traded for Trevor Ariza. It just
Yeah, I
never
mean
worked out.
losing PJ Tucker for next year will obviously hurt them more than losing Caleb Martin did. You just look at the minutes they
Yeah.
played in the playoffs. The Heat were much more reliant on PJ Tucker when things mattered than they were on Caleb Martin. Now, again, Caleb Martin is still much earlier in his development than maybe we'd be having a different conversation 12 months from now. But yeah, that's obviously the concern is they're not, it's not like a 1-for-1 fit with that where you just give PJ Caleb Martin's minutes. They're different guys.
Yeah. Another name that like listen, I'm not reporting this, but like it's just been a name that's always linked to the Heat and I guess would make some sense is Harrison Barnes. He's under contract, but
Uh-huh.
he could try to trade for him. He kind of fits what they need at that 4 spot. Kyle Kuzma, another interesting name that is always
I
talking
think
great about
Kuzma would
Heat
be a
culture.
really, really good fit.
Yeah. So I mean, they don't have to fill the hole in free agency, right? They
Right.
could try to trade for a guy like that. But the point is, like, it's gonna be tough for the Heat to find exactly what PJ gave them this season. He was
Right. He's a
so
very unique. I mean, he's one of the most unique players in
yeah,
the NBA. There's really
and
no one just
and
around.
Bam is a unique center, so you need a unique 4.
Right.
And that's what makes it so tough. I mean, he have cycled through so many guys next to Bam: Kelly Olynyk, Myers Leonard, Jay Crowder, Trevor Ariza, Mo Harkless, like PJ Tucker this year. Like only a few have really fit really well. And PJ and Jay are like the 2. So it'd be a shame if they obviously lost Jay after a season and they lose PJ after a season. Like just unfortunate for the Heat.
Joe Ingles, another one I like.
Joe Ingles obviously like he'd be great fit, but
He's
he's
like
coming
not
off
on this top 50 list for some reason. He's in
because
like others.
I don't think they know if he's gonna be available. They
Oh,
don't know if he's gonna be because he had his Achilles injury, I think.
gotcha.
Um, yeah, so he had to have surgery on it, and
Right.
I think
He's
that's
a little different too. He's more of a 3 than a 4 probably. But
sorry, no, it was a torn ACL. I apologize, but
yeah, big of
but
swing on him. I like him.
yeah, point. That's the point. Like we just don't know when he'll be available, how he'll be. But yeah, Joe Ingles would fit well, I think.
Carmelo does not give you at all the same thing, but
Yeah, I mean they're names, but there's no one like
yeah.
It's gonna be tough. It's gonna be hard.
Yeah,
Like
I think part of
they're
it
not
it's
gonna be
it's
as
a, it's
good.
a, it's a it's a gamble, right? You get by letting him walk. It's a gamble that one, he will not age as gracefully as the Sixers think, or as they're willing to risk. Two, that Caleb Martin will continue to improve because if PJ leaves, I think it's pretty safe to assume that Caleb will be back.
Right.
It's a gamble. At three, you can find someone in free agency who will help make up for some of what you lose. And then, like you said, it's also a gamble that maybe by the trade deadline, if it's not working, you can trade for Kyle Kuzma or Harris, like that someone will be available who you feel can give you um, some sort of a replacement of what PJ gave you. Now
Kevin
that,
Durant. Kevin
that
Durant would be a good
yeah,
fit. Yeah.
yeah. Now that those midseason trades never, you don't want to
Yeah.
bank on that. I mean, you think of the
Yeah. You
midseason
just don't know.
trades he'd have made, like, it's been pretty hit or miss.
Yeah. You just don't. You can't bank
Jay
on it.
Crowder was like, if you get Jay Crowder, that's perfect. Like if you get a guy who replicates what he did, but sometimes you give Mo Harkless a contract and it doesn't work out at all.
No. So yeah, the Heat learned that lesson 2 years ago, and I'm
Yeah.
sure. I'm saying that I don't know if they regretted it because again, it was a 3-year contract Jay Crowder got for good amount of money, but I'm sure that year in the present moment they regretted it, right? Because
Yeah,
Jay was
they're
such a good
watching Jay
fit.
Crowder play in the finals.
Yeah, yeah, and they were struggling. They tried to get, like I said, Trevor Ariza, and that he didn't feel really
Yeah, there's another
fit
one
either.
season trade that didn't
Um,
work out.
yeah, so we'll see. But that I think is the big question right now for the Heat entering free agency because Caleb Martin, that probably will be decided with what happens with PJ Tucker.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Victor Oladipo, they have his full bird rights, so technically they could keep him if they wanted to. I guess it'll just depend on his price
Yeah.
and how much he gets in the open market. I would expect maybe like mid-level money for Victor,
Mm-hmm.
which I don't think is a bad deal for him if he want to keep him. Like I think that's considering his upside and potential and his first healthy offseason in like 4 years.
Yeah.
I think that's reasonable to like give him that to keep him. But to me, PJ is kind of the headliner here
Mm-hmm.
entering Thursday.
Hassan Whiteside, free agent, bring Hassan back.
Don't see that one. I don't see that
Heat
happening.
legend Nemanja Bjelica, free
He
agent.
played, gave Golden State some good minutes there in the
He kind
playoffs.
of he had like two possessions and was it game?
Two
I can't remember if it was
possessions.
game 5 or game 6 where the Celtics had him on like back-to-back possessions. I think he stripped Jaylen Brown, which I guess is not that hard to do. It doesn't seem, and like stopped someone else. Like he's feisty.
He is.
Um,
He is. I
Goran
just.
is Goran coming back?
I mean, I feel like it's at some point he's going to join Dallas, right? Like it just makes sense, especially if it was Jalen Brunson.
That's true.
And he's
The
been rumored to play with Luca for so
Heat
long.
would have to basically give him a minimum that he would just be like, I want to come back to Miami, essentially,
Yeah.
right?
I mean, he could. He loves Miami. We know that. He's always here. He's always wearing Heat shirts. Like it's just he's a Heat lifer, as they say.
Yeah.
So I mean, it could be back, right? But I guess it just depends on if he does want to play with Luca for a season. If the
Right.
Heat have room for him on the roster. I mean, with Gabe Vincent, like how much is Goran going
Yeah.
to play? That's another thing. So I just don't
Yeah,
know if it
Miami
makes
would be like a
sense.
retirement job for him, basically.
Yeah, I just don't know if it makes sense, especially like if Udonis Haslam comes back, you're gonna have two guys in the back end of your roster who are not playing. Not saying that Goran can play, like I'm
Yeah, yeah.
still
He had
has
some
some
moments
spot.
last year.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but it's just I don't know if like it's the fit with Gabe Vincent, kind of
Right.
establishing himself as the backup point guard.
Yeah. Markeith, you think he's going on?
I don't think so. I feel like that one just kind of it just seems like both sides is probably makes sense to part ways.
Yeah.
Maybe if they lose PJ, they see Markeith
Right.
as an
Then
option.
maybe there's yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, he was the starter at the beginning of the year. I think people kind of forget
yeah.
that.
There was a whole conversation of like who's going to start, PJ or Markeith before
Yeah.
last season. So maybe they kind of revisit that if as a backup plan if PJ actually leaves, and he probably could be had for the minimum or very cheap at this point because he really didn't have a season last year. Like, it was kind of a
Sure,
waste of
he's somewhere
it.
on that list of PJ replace. Even if he's the
Yeah,
last guy on that list, he's somewhere
yeah.
on that
He's
list that
someone
they
else,
have.
so you can't rule it out.
Yeah.
But yeah, Dedmon, Markieff. But I don't know if the Heat just want to give the backup center job now to Yurtseven, kind of give
Yeah.
him that opportunity, and then it might not make sense to bring Dedmon back.
Yeah.
Then Markieff, again, it might just depend on what the roster looks like 3 days into free agency.
All right, I think we can wrap things up there. We'll be back next week to recap free agency. I guess most of the big news will be out of the way by then, right? Even though, actually, I guess by the time we're back next week, yes, the contracts will officially have been signed. I forgot we're recording this a couple days early.
Yeah.
We'll also do, I guess, probably. Well, I mean, we'll see how much news comes about next week, but we'll talk summer league at some point here. When do you head to Vegas?
Actually, next Wednesday, July 6th.
Oh, so you might be Well, we'll see when we record this, but you might be
We might
recording
have to.
from the craps table at the Bellagio.
I think so.
Yeah.
I imagine that we will be recording next time we record. I will be in Vegas, so
All right.
you
So
should fly
that'll
out
be
there.
very exciting.
Tell the Miami Herald to fly you out there, just so we can record the podcast live in Vegas for a
Exactly.
second
We
straight.
did that last year, so
Yeah,
it was worth it.
yeah. I think they can make that happen. Let's do it.
All right. Thanks as always for listening. You can follow Anthony on Twitter at Anthony_Chang. Follow him for all your Heat offseason updates because there are a lot of them these days. You can follow me on Twitter at DBWilson2. I'm sure I'll be chipping in a little bit on Heat coverage here and there over the next few weeks. But anyway, thanks as always for listening, and we will talk to you guys next week.